This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. It is Friday, the 11th of August today, and very excited to be welcoming back a previous guest from our Teachers Talk Radio. We have got the amazing American educator, Aaron Burden. Good morning, Aaron. I can see he's here in the studio and he'll be joining us shortly. So if you haven't listened into my show before, my name is Poppy Gibson. I was a primary school teacher. I'm now a lecturer at university where I help hopefully inspire and teach the next generation of primary school teachers. But really excitingly today, we have got Aaron here with us to hopefully make some comparisons, think about what's going on overseas in America compared to here in the UK. So, good morning, Aaron.
Good morning. How are you doing, Bobby?
I'm so good, thank you. How are you?
Hang on just a second as I take another good swig of coffee.
Tell me, what time is it over there?
It's 6 a.m. It's not too bad for us teachers, you know. I mean, granted, for the
6
summer, it's
a.m.
pretty bad.
Well, Aaron, we really appreciate you being here at 6 a.m. USA time. So thank you so much. Obviously, you're a dedicated educator. What can I say?
Right? Exactly. All right. We do it for the love. We certainly don't do it for the pay, do we?
Exactly, that's it. It's for the love. So also good morning. So we've got lots of listeners here this morning. We've got Carl. Good morning. Everyone that is listening in here on Teachers Talk Radio, do remember you can write, good morning, Paul. You can write in the chat if you're listening on Podbean. If any questions for Aaron come up, type them in the chat and we can share them with him. Otherwise, if you're listening back, unfortunately, you can't. But I'm sure at the end of the show, we'll ask Aaron where you can find him on socials if you want to carry on these conversations. So to start with, Aaron, for anyone who's not heard from you before, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please? Maybe tell us about your education journey and what you currently do.
Absolutely. Well, I have been teaching elementary school, which is, I guess, primary school in the UK. That I've been teaching third grade mostly in the United States for about 10 years. I also was a graduate assistant at Old Dominion University in the Department of Education for about 4 years, in addition to being a teacher. And I also am currently a host of 2 podcasts on YouTube. One dedicated to mental health called Mental Health Mondays, as well as one called the Educators Podcast, of which I had a very fantastic guest at one point, Dr. Poppy Gibson. What a great, fabulous chat! It was splendid. It was fantastic, and a lot of cool stories that were shared. Particularly, I really liked the story you said where you shared about having your students sing in sign language to a parent who was hearing impaired. That was fantastic. Can you
I love
guys
that you
hear me
remembered
okay?
that. Someone's saying you're a little bit quiet. I don't know if you can turn up your volume at all, Aaron.
Let me work on that here on my end here. Can you hear me now? Am I coming in now?
Yeah, actually, that might be better. If anyone's in the chat, let us know. But Aaron, it certainly sounds like you like to be busy, so it doesn't really surprise me that you're here at 6 a.m. your time. It sounds like you like to.
Yeah. I need to. Maybe I need to get a little more sleep in here and there, but it's all good.
Well, is school on in America at the moment, or you're on holiday?
No, well, it's a mix. There are some school districts are already going back. We don't go back. Well, teacher work week starts around the 22nd, and then the kids come back the following week. But then this is weird because they come back for about 4 days, then they're gone for about 4 days, and then they come back. So it's basically those first 4 days. Anything we teach them, it's going to be like restarting when they come back.
Wait, so let me get this straight. You don't quite have the 6-week break that we get here in the UK, then?
No, we do. It's weird because each district is different, and there isn't really. It really is dependent on the districts, not even the states, where there's some school districts that will end right at Memorial Day, but they'll pick up like the first couple weeks of August. And then there's Virginia Beach Schools, which I'm a part of, where we go all the way to about the third week of June. And
Okay.
we end in the third week of June, but then we don't go back until like the last little part of August. But
Oh,
I
so
think that
you didn't teach in July. You didn't have classes in July over there.
no, we have a summer break of roughly 2 months, and but
Wow.
then
Okay. Okay. So yeah. So you finish earlier than us, and I guess that explains then why you go back earlier.
yeah, we go back. We go back earlier. Plus, the summer is typically filled with professional development.
Really?
Yeah, we
What,
there's
like
usually
what? What have you been doing? Tell us what you've been up
well, there's
to.
professional development. A lot of the stuff it really depends on, and a lot of times it's whatever the hot topic is of the year. Like there's topics on like on shifting your teaching styles. There are some really cool things like um, focusing more on project based learning, which I actually really like. Shifting things to where you provide the scaffolding and we're shifting away from the lecture regurgitation type of teaching where
Hmm.
you go, okay, this is the you spend almost 40 minutes doing a whole group lesson and before the kids really get their hands in. Now it's like you do a quick 5 minute intro, and then you get the kids learning, and sometimes you don't
Hmm.
even do
Hmm.
that intro, you just get the kids hands on first and let them explore, and then as they're exploring, that's where the teaching takes place.
I love that. I love that. And I think, yeah, the good teachers here in the UK are doing the same. Whereas we always thought you had to have 15 minutes introduction or whatever. But wait, so I want to pick up on that. So all this kind of extra learning that you do, is it compulsory? Like, because if you're a UK educator, you know, at the moment we're trying to say like when you finish, which is normally, I think this year was the 21st of July, all our schools pretty much finish that date, unless they're private schools. Then we're like, don't do anything. Don't go to school until you're back. Our schools go back 5th of September. So there's a big push here in the UK for teachers to try and not do anything school related. So this seems baffling to me. Like, do you have to do it? Is it optional? Like, you want to do it? Or is anyone
Well,
checking that you do it?
it's optional, and I put that in air quotes. Part of your now they did shift this a little bit differently, but the part of getting your recertification as a teacher is you have to have a certain number of professional development points, and there are several options of how you can get those points, but the main way is taking professional development classes. Now, then there are mandatory classes, which are typically there's usually 3 or 4 mandatory classes on updates to the curriculum, but those classes are usually like you'll have a like we took a there's a math one where we talk about the updates in the math curriculum, and then there's a language arts oriented one, and then there's a science and social studies one. But
Hmm.
all of those professional development classes, they tend to have the same message. Like in this case, it's a focus on letting the kids do more exploring. With language arts, it was a lot more. They're shifting now, which I'm still kind of wrapping my head around, but we're pulling away from guided reading and going more hardcore with word study. And I've always been I personally have always been a philosophy of the philosophy that you really want to build good readers. You want them to get excited about books, and guided
Hmm.
reading I feel like is really effective in that. Word study is helpful, but the students I teach at third grade. Those are usually typically 9 and 10 year olds, and that's the age. If you look at Erickson, that's that age where they're leaving that learning to read space, and they're kind of getting into that
Hmm.
reading to learn space. And I think that I just feel like if we completely turn away from guided reading, we're going to we're going to disenfranchise kids from wanting to read.
Interesting, because you know what? I think any UK teachers listening, depending on their school, might have very mixed views on guided reading. Honestly,
Yeah.
Aaron, I can tell you when I remember when I was a teacher, and in one school, you could only read the set book that was set for your group on
Yeah.
this week, and some of the books were so dry, like
Oh
really
my goodness.
dry.
No,
You had to read
I
this
agree.
fact book about something, and I think
Well,
you're right. You're going to lose
that's
the love of
where,
reading.
yeah, exactly. And that's where I also, this is I don't want to be controversial, but I think it's important, and I will say this, that Virginia Beach Schools has allows a bit of flexibility with their teachers now, where in the past they haven't.
Hmm.
They won't officially say this, but it's kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If you and it depends on really your administrator too. If you have a principal that supports you, then you're in good shape. But if you have a principal that's not supportive, it's a different story. But principal we have at our school is very supportive, and she understands that you gotta interest the kids. No, the
Hmm.
kids don't want to hear about Uncle Uncle Barry's farm goats or something if they're not into that. They much rather read, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, or the Radioactive Underpants, or those kind of books. And what's cool is you can a lot of these lessons you can plug in. An effective teacher can plug in much more interesting books and stories. I also like to write in my spare time, and I enjoy creating stories that include the kids.
Oh,
When we
I
were
love
teaching
that.
writing, I love in teaching writing. I let the kids go crazy. We ended up writing a story about this mutant piece of cheese that chased all the kids in the cafeteria. And I mean, it was a collaboration with the other students, but the kids loved it. They got into it, and I think that really touches on when a lot of kids don't like something. I think a lot of times it's because they feel it has to fit in this box, that we
Hmm.
create the box as educators, and in the curriculum, we're creating this box that it really doesn't need to fit in. If you
Hmm.
follow my meaning,
Yeah.
I think it's important for teachers to go rogue. Kind of, you know,
Within a bigger box.
yes, yeah,
Go rogue within the bigger box, but try and not make smaller boxes, right?
yeah, exactly. And keep the student's best interest in mind. I feel like as long as what you're doing is ultimately keeping the student's best interest at heart, then
Hmm.
that's what I think is important. Is as long as you're keeping what's the students' interests are, and keeping their attention. Because let's be honest, nowadays it's crazy trying to keep. You're competing with kids now are raised on social media, so you're
Yeah.
competing with that. You're competing with Among Us, Fortnite. You're competing with anime, manga. You're competing with TikTok. You're competing with all these distractions, and you've got to somehow make Jamestown history entertaining and interesting to them. You've got to make you got to make solids, liquids, and gases entertaining.
Yeah.
You gotta really be um, Bill Nye, and I think it really comes down to that. A lot of people don't realize what teachers have to be in one
Yeah.
given day. We're not just
Yeah.
sitting there regurgitating a lesson. We're also their parents for most of that day. We're also their nurses, their doctors. We're also a game show host. We're we're doing all these things. We've got all these plates spinning, and that's just if everything goes fine. When you
Hmm.
get that kid with the bloody nose, or there's a fight that you have to be psychologists now. You have to. There's so many things that teachers have to do, and I really wish that more of society understood that, because there's a lot that teachers go
Yeah.
through, and we definitely do it for the love.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And yeah, we do it for the love. And that's why, just backtracking a bit to what you were saying at the start of the show for people just joining us, it really surprised me that there's this culture for you in the USA to keep training and upskilling over the summer. Because like I say, like we're trying to do a big push here in the UK, like once you finish term, you shouldn't be in class doing your display boards. Like, take a break. And it's been really great actually on social media. I've seen a lot of UK teachers like, I'm on holiday, or even if at the moment we've got cost of living crisis, even if you can't go abroad, I'm seeing people like, I'm going to read these 5 fiction books before I go back to work, and like people just having space. And so another thing I want to ask you about, Aaron, there. So you mentioned that in America, you have to do extra courses and training for yourself to get your, did you say reaccreditation?
Yeah, recertification. Yes.
So what is that? Because here in the UK, once you get qualified teacher status, that's it. You're good to go. You never have to. So what's this mean? Like, you have to keep upskilling, otherwise you can't be a teacher. Like, what is
Well,
it?
yeah, it used to be every 5 years now, and again, it's state. There's state specifics. There's district specifics. Like, and you might be certified in you might be certified in one state. Now, some states like Virginia, you get certified in the state of Virginia, you pretty much, that counts everywhere. But there's some places where your certification only is specific to that state. And it's like, if you move to North Carolina from like Ohio, you might have to get recertified and take more classes. I'm with you. I think that especially the calling of a teacher is such that I think if you chose this profession, once you're certified as a teacher, I think that should be it. I mean, yes, you need they want to push professional development, but I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is they want to make sure that we're keeping pace with how education is evolving. But what typically happens is it's almost like it becomes this change for the sake of change sometimes. Like, we'll change a like, we went from using Google Classroom to Schoology, and then we went from Schoology to Canvas, and these are all learning platforms. These are like how we would distribute work. And during the pandemic, we switched to Schoology, and so all the teachers in our school district had to relearn an entire way of sending on assignments and
Mm-hmm.
homework, and
Mm-hmm.
sending assignments through to the students digitally, right in the middle of the pandemic when we're shut down. And that was a nightmare to overhaul that. So there's sometimes I feel like we're making changes for the sake of making changes. But
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times, and this is just, me from a personal standpoint, a lot of times what we're learning is stuff we're already doing. There's very few times where we're learning, like, there's like a new little thing, like, oh, that's it, I'm going to try that. Occasionally that happens, but a lot of this stuff is just repackaged what we've already learned. A little funny side
Mm.
note: I was cleaning out my closet here, doing some spring cleaning, and I came across my third grade report card
Oh
from,
my gosh!
and I
What? So
was
what's third grade? How old's what's
that's
third grade?
9 and 10 years old. That's 9 and 10 years old level.
Okay, so same as like year 5 for us in the UK. Okay, and what
Uh,
did it say? What did it say, Aaron?
well, I mean, I need to work on my handwriting. And,
It's
what's funny,
important.
the comments were really funny because it fit me. He was like, "Oh, he's a dreamer. He needs to stay focused." And I'm sitting there thinking, "Yeah, this describes half my class." And then the other, like like the one, it was funny too, is my third grade teacher. I didn't realize how stressed I made her. I thought she liked me, and I think she did. I think she did, but like she said, Aaron is a very interesting young lad. And I was like, interesting. He has some very interesting ideas. And I was thinking, like, what was I saying back then that made me, I was that a strange kid? But the other thing I thought that was interesting was a lot of the wording that she used in her comments were are stuff that I hear now, that's like, is the same kind of wording that is being presented to us as if it's brand new.
Mhm.
Like, we have a thing that there's a program in the United States called PBIS, which is it's based positive behavior intervention strategies. And it when you it sounds it's this new thing that they're pushing, and it's this new solution. It's like this magic pill that's gonna make behaviors better in
Hmm.
schools. But when you really look into it, it's everything we've learned as anybody that's a behaviorist, anybody that studies Skinner, it's basics. It's positive reinforcement. It's, you know, focusing on the desired behaviors, but it's kind of repackaged as this new thing. Plus, anybody that's an educator knows there's no magic pill for behavior control for anything.
Yeah,
But it's just kind of
exactly.
interesting how it's packaged as this new thing. Plus, and again, this is, I don't know if this will ever change, but you know how it can be sometimes when administrators get an idea and they don't fully understand it, but they kind of roll it out to teachers and say, "Hey, here's this new idea," and then we have to kind of manage it. And I think that one of the mistakes that we make is, yes, you want to focus on the positive, but you don't want to sacrifice the structure of your behavior system.
Hmm.
And there's
Hmm.
a big push in the United States to reduce referrals to the office, reduce behavior referrals. But what that's causing, it's causing a lot of principals to deter their teachers from writing referrals, even if the student needs it. And what's happening is it's kind of putting teachers in a tough spot. I personally haven't really had behavioral issues, but I've had some kids that I really wanted to send to the office because I just wanted to, like, hey, get out of here, buddy. You're driving me nuts. But I feel like there is a lot to PBIS, and if you find what really makes these kids tick, and you find
Hmm.
what they're if students feel safe and appreciated in your class, typically they're going to want to be there.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean
definitely.
you're not going to be without issues. I had to step in between two kids that were going to go to fists if I didn't. But I think part of it is creating that community. But what I think sometimes though the philosophy is the absence of referrals means the absence of problems, and that's not it.
Exactly, exactly. And I think you're right, Aaron. I think it's all about fostering that culture of, communication with your pupils, of that mutual respect. And then that when there is that issue, that there's an anger issue, there's a behavior issue, then you really know that there's a need there that isn't being met. Like, it's not to do with the space they're in, it's something else. And I think back to what you said at the start, Aaron, like, we have to have the children's best interests at heart. And the UK is the same. We see so many things repackaged over time. Like, the amount of things I've
Yeah,
seen, like, obviously I was teacher for 11 years now, lecturing for 6, but I see, like, my current, like, trainee teachers be like, oh yeah, there's this new idea, and I look at it, I'm like, no way, like, I was doing that like 20 years ago or whatever. Like, this isn't new, it's being repackaged. But also, where's that line? And I think your administrators sound a bit different. I don't think we have administrators in that way, but often, yeah, there might be management in a school, your senior leadership team, who have brought in a new scheme or something. And it's kind of thinking, but where is the scheme valuable? But where is actually your teacher's wealth of experience? Like, you've got a staff here with so much experience. And I think that's where
yeah,
our recertification comes. Like, everything you're doing every single day is upskilling you, right? So
yeah.
it just seems crazy to me. Like, so tell me a bit more. I'm sorry to keep going on about the recertification, but so you said maybe every 5 years you have to, in the USA, you do like an exam, or what you said, you earn points for
Yeah.
like
You,
courses.
you earn points by taking courses. There are different things you can do. There's like a menu of what you can do. There's always going to be at least several hours of mandatory professional development, and that's usually whatever they're rolling out new, and like, hey, this is the thing you need to learn how to do. But then there's also, you need a certain number of points of hours to, in addition to that, and those are almost like the equivalent of like electives. But as the robotics mentor for our robotics club, I was able to get a couple of those. When I would take my training courses for robotics, but you could choose, like, hey, I want to get better at learning how to do how to make podcasts, or I want to learn how
Hmm.
to make videos, or I want to learn how and use them in the classroom. One of the classes I took, which I couldn't believe this was even on the menu, but I took a Minecraft education class, and that opened such a huge door for me because then I became known as the Minecraft teacher. I don't know if you noticed in my picture, I've got my robot, Mr. Creeper, with me. He was my
Yes,
teaching assistant.
I love that picture.
And for those of you who don't know, creepers are these notorious creatures in the Minecraft game that will blow up your house if they get too close to you. But kids are still into Minecraft. It's they're more into, I guess, Roblox is one of their new favorite things. But when they came out with an education edition, it's essentially Minecraft, but you can, as a teacher, you can create built-in lessons. I mean, and you can do so much with it. You can, like, for example, what we in third grade, we for social studies, we learn about the 5 different civilizations. We learn of ancient civilizations. We learn about Egypt, China, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, and the Empire Mali. And each of those, I tied in a Minecraft project for the kids, and they would in a rotation, they would spend 20 minutes a day working together on a project. And for Egypt, I had a challenge where they had to build their own pyramid, and they had the math dimensions. They had to figure out how much sandstone they needed to build this pyramid. They had to make sure there was some kind of tomb on the inside to mirror how the tombs were. As a class, we built our own version of the Great Wall of China, and in ancient Rome, we built a working aqueduct where you can actually, from the mountain to bring water down to the city, and it was really cool. So, and again, this is Minecraft. What a lot of people see, it's this blocky character running around, but the kids love it. It was interactive, and that's the stuff. When you find those kind of activities that really get the kids excited, they jump out of bed. They want to come to school. They don't want. They don't feel like that they're in jail for 8 hours a day.
Exactly. I think it's back to what you were saying, Aaron, earlier, that although we do have some boundaries, and boxes and hoops to jump through as educators, like within our own space, we can be creative. So that feels super cool, and I'm glad that course was useful. Aaron, we're halfway through the show. so just time flies when I talk to you. So what I'm going to do, don't go away, everyone that's listening. I'm going to play the news, and we'll be back in just under 6 minutes. And in the second half, Aaron, I'm really going to pick your brains about critical thinking in the classroom. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, go grab a cup of Job. Is that what you call it in America?
Cup of mud.
Cup of mud. Okay, you go do that, and we'll be back in about 6 minutes.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
With exam results looming for students from all 4 home nations and around the world, Schools Week features an article concentrating on the ongoing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The article, written by a head teacher, says we need to continue to consider the additional burden of the pandemic. It reminds us that this year's Year 13s were part of a cohort who didn't sit GCSE exams, and that this year's Year 11s were in Year 8 when lockdowns began, although the start of GCSE was supposed to be a return to normal for these students. Teachers too faced the challenge of a return to normal content, having had it reduced over the last 2 years. ECTs also needed some increased support in delivering the broader content for a number of GCSEs. Workload for pupils and teachers shifted, and perhaps increased as schools tried to find the right balance of support, revision, and basic content coverage by often offering after-school and holiday intervention sessions. Whatever happens for individuals on results days this year, the ghost of the pandemic, he says, has not disappeared just yet. The Guardian reports on new local government association research which suggests council-maintained schools in England outperform academies in Ofsted ratings. The research found 93% of council-maintained schools were ranked good or outstanding by Ofsted as of the 31st of January 2023. This compared with 87% of academies that have been graded since they converted. The study also found only 57% of academies that were already an academy in August 2018 managed to improve standards from inadequate or requires improvement to good or outstanding, compared with 73% of council-maintained schools. The research has prompted many to question the evidence for a move away from council-maintained schools. Currently, 80% of secondary schools and 40% of primaries are academies. Councils were last able to open maintained schools in 2012. A Department for Education spokesperson said academy reforms have played a major role in increasing the proportion of good or outstanding schools. Mary Bousted of the National Education Union said allowing local authorities to open new maintained schools would boost the ability to respond to demographic changes by opening quality provision. Whilst the research has been seen by many as a warning about the risks of government policy on academisation, some have pointed out that because schools who are failing are required to convert to academies, the numbers are always going to be skewed. A report by the Children's Commissioner shows that eating disorders such as bulimia, anorexia and binge eating are on the rise in England. Figures suggest that in the UK an estimated 1.25 million have an eating disorder, but that young people under the age of 25 are disproportionately affected. The report points to NHS figures which it says show a large and recent increase in the numbers of hospital admissions for young people due to eating disorders, with almost half being for those under 25. Whilst the large majority of those affected are female, admissions of young men have more than doubled in the period from 2015-16 to 2020-21. However, according to the report, whilst the number of children and young people starting treatment has more than doubled, so have waiting times for the beginning of treatment. Urgent cases now take more than 12 weeks to begin. The report suggests that government need to tackle some of the drivers of disordered eating, including online content and forms of social media. In the USA, the Education Secretary, Miguel Cardona, says the Supreme Court decision to eliminate affirmative action may help to axe legacy and donor-based college admissions. The Guardian covers the story which focuses on the college admissions process across America. The wealthiest Americans, who are overwhelmingly white, benefit disproportionately from college admissions based on familial relations with alumni and school donors. Cardona praised colleges who have already stopped legacy admissions, including Wesleyan University, Johns Hopkins, and Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He said these and other schools were making sure they're doing more for diversity than they were doing before the end of affirmative action. He did, however, make his criticism of the decision by the Supreme Court clear, when he said that there are brown and black kids who are going to feel like they're not wanted. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Welcome back, and I hope you all enjoyed the news today. This is the Friday morning break with me, Poppy Gibson, and we are joined from overseas, where I think it's only 6:34 over there. Welcome back, Aaron Burden.
Yes, 6:34, and I have switched to Dr. Pepper instead of coffee, but still I'm getting my source of caffeine. But if you're a teacher, you know you have a good relationship with caffeine in some form.
hopefully a healthy one. Keep hydrated, everyone.
Well, yeah, it's water the rest of the day. In fact, I used to have this big giant I would stop off at a place at Sonic, and I would get like the giant Route 44 ounce tea in the iced tea in the morning. and then I would throughout the rest of the day fill it with water. And so I had this big giant 44-ounce water that I would have to try to drink. The problem with that is, as a teacher, you've got to when the bladder starts to make itself known, you got to really manage that. We've in our hallway, we actually managed to have a work out a deal where if there was ever a bathroom emergency, we had it set. We knew when those times would kind of be, so we'd have the students on independent work, and one teacher would kind of stand between classrooms and cover while the other teacher made a mad dash for the faculty restroom.
I mean, I love
Other than
hearing that you would even do that, because I think sometimes as teachers you're so worried about, like, you know, meeting your own needs. You're so worried about actually just making sure your pupils are okay, that I remember like sometimes going days where I wasn't eating properly, wasn't going to the bathroom
Mhm.
when I needed to, and that's really not healthy. So that's good. You had a
That
good partnership there.
But that was a learning curve. I mean, my first several years of teaching, I'd say my first 4 years of teaching, I wouldn't eat at all, and then I'd be starving when I'd come home and just scarf food down. Whereas I was able to pace couple things to do. Sometimes just have a few emergency granola bars in the drawer. Have a
That's good. It's
have
good
some.
advice.
Make sure make sure you take that. I think that is something important, not just physically but also mentally, is you've got to find ways to take care of yourself. And you got to it's not being selfish, because even though sometimes I think we put guilt on ourselves as teachers and we shouldn't, but you can only a pint can only hold a pint, it can't hold a gallon. And sometimes you got to know when to not burn yourself out. You got to make sure you take care of your kids, because ultimately take care of your needs, because ultimately if you don't, you're not going to be 100% for those kids. And a lot of
Exactly.
teachers get burnt out because I had a year last year where I was really struggling. I needed to take some time off because I was I was so exhausted, and I knew I couldn't be the awesome teacher I wanted to be. So I knew I needed to take some time off to kind of get myself straight. And I think it's important to do that. And if you have a school system or an administrator that understands that, then that's golden.
Yeah.
Some cases you don't.
It's so true. And Aaron, what you're saying, like, you need to take care of yourself before you can properly take care of your pupils. And I love that advice about snacks. I remember when I was an early career teacher, like at the start of my career, and you know, you get in early because you want to get everything ready. And so you probably haven't had a good breakfast. And then, yeah, you're not going to get a chance to even probably go to the staff room at break because you're setting up your lessons. Like having that emergency snack drawer, that is a great idea. And maybe, yeah, emergency drinks, because you know that when you know your sugar levels low and you're hungry, your body's already screaming out for, you know, nurturing. So if we can at least do that, make sure you've had a snack, or yeah, you can get like those energy bars and things, can't you? That's really good
Hmm.
advice for anyone listening.
Yes.
So we've only got 20 minutes left, Aaron. I don't know how it goes so quick.
Yeah.
But I know that when you and I were chatting before the show about ideas, I really love that you wanted to talk a bit about critical thinking, because even at university level where I work now, we talk a lot with our adult students about what is critical thinking. We talk about critical reading, critical writing, and critical thinking. So maybe we can just use this last 20 minutes to unpick a bit what that means for you as an educator in the US, like how you nurture that in your classroom. So first of all, like, how would you personally define the term critical thinking?
Well, I love this because we always come back to our why with teaching. Like, what is your why? Why did you get into teaching? What made you decide to become an educator? And first
Hmm.
of all, I don't think there was a choice. I think I fought it for several years in other careers, and it chose me. Like
Oh, I
the
love
light
that.
just clicked on. But the reason, like my main reason for becoming a teacher is I was seeing a world that was becoming less and less filled with less and less critical thinking and a lot more knee-jerk reactions. And we could argue, well, if that's always been the case, we just hear it more because of social media, what have you. But I wanted to make some kind of influence, even if it was just a small influence, of training our future students to become more critical thinkers and to become good listeners. I think with critical thinking is it's different than it's not being like a conspiracy crazy nut or being, it's not being unresponsive to new ideas, but being a critical thinker means don't don't just take what you read or what you hear or what you see at face value. Step back, let it digest, and really just kind of take it through a thought process. And that goes from everything from when you're teaching science, I think you really need to look at the scientific method, not just for science itself, but for I think for anything in life is and what I wanted kids to understand, and this is something I've noticed when I've had chats with adults, is I think a lot of times adults we tend to get emotionally attached to an idea or to a hypothesis. We'll get emotionally attached to, or it'll become part of our identity. Like, and you see that in politics, like a certain politician, you either really like them or you really hate them, and that becomes part of your identity. Or a sports team. In some cases, there's a sports team that you're really fired up about. But a lot of times that happens with ideas. And what we need to do is remember, number one, if you later find out that your hypothesis is wrong, like for example, we had a project we were trying to determine. We had magnets, and we were trying to determine like what variable we could change to influence to make the magnets work better. And one of the kids said his hypothesis was the red magnets were stronger than the blue magnets. Well, they were all the same magnet. They were just painted different colors. And some of the kids were like, that doesn't, they were chastising the kid for that. And I said, no, this is a great example of a hypothesis that got proven wrong, but he wasn't wrong. Like that, a good scientist is able to separate themselves from their hypothesis. Having your hypothesis proven wrong based on data doesn't make you wrong. You're only wrong if you ignore data that challenges your hypothesis. It's in the conclusion that you got to do that. And and I hope I'm not losing you guys on this, but where that relates to life, if you have an idea about something, and whether it's about a person, about a social philosophy, or whatever it is, and then you receive new data, you need to be able to accept that new data and go, oh, okay, I see it differently now. It doesn't make you wrong. And I think a lot of times people get very defensive when they have an idea about something and then new data comes along and they go and they almost turn away from that data because it's making them feel wrong, and they're not.
Yeah,
Does that make
and
sense?
I think it makes sense. And I wonder if part of this is the way that we might see that our education system, it sounds like here in the UK and over there in USA, conditions children to feel like there's a right answer for everything. So,
Yes.
the way we do a lot of our standardized testing, there's a right answer. It's not like one of the questions on our SATs paper is, what's the meaning of life? There's no existential questions. They're all, there is a right or wrong answer. You'll get 1 mark or 2 marks. So I think sometimes our fear of failure comes from almost that people pleasing that we're conditioning in the classroom. So no, I think that's a really valid point. Yeah, seeing that it was the theory that was wrong, not the person that was wrong. So yeah, I like that. And one thing that I was talking about earlier this week actually with my students, Aaron, like the role of artificial intelligence in our society. So actually, we were saying one of the only things that robots will not be able to do is be human. They can literally do everything else, but they can't be human. So then thinking, what can we do that they can't do? So that's why I think critical thinking is key. They can do everything. They can critically think in a robotic way, but how can we encourage our learners to critically think in a human way that has still got something else? I definitely feel there is some essence in being human that robots will never entirely have. And so really the core of it is getting to that, isn't it? How are we preparing our learners for a society where robots can do everything?
No,
what can we bring to the table, right?
Well, you pretty much said it there, is that the one thing that AI can't do is be human. They're programmed by humans, but they can't be human. And you hit the nail on the head there too. Education's going to have to change. It's always been evolving, but it's really going to we're really going to have to sit back and change how we approach education, because if you like we talked about, used to be lecture regurgitation. In our standardized test, it was always like A, B, C, or D, and only one of those four is correct. Or, but I feel like kids really learn. I've always felt like the kids in my classroom got the most out of the lessons where we had an open discussion, and whether it was Socratic method, whether it was just like an open discussion, and their input, like they had buy-in, their input, they were discussing, and sometimes the discussions went a completely different way. Like we were talking about needs versus wants, and one of my students brought up that her grandmother in Puerto Rico was without power, but she needed her medicine refrigerated, and so she said that electricity is a need. And then another student said, no, it's a want. You don't, and it was this great debate. And I just stepped back and let the kids debate. And I think that's huge. But the one thing I was trying to make sure of is to facilitate listening to each other. And I think that's something that we really, that's understanding what it means to be human, understanding that we're all human. And I think a lot of times that's what gets lost in a lot of these conflicts with each other. A lot of race issues, or gender issues, or a lot of these issues where we're yelling at each other and we're not listening to each other. And I think that regardless of your view of things, I think we all really deep down want the same things. We just have different ideas of how to get to that. And I feel like learning how to properly communicate, put yourself in each other's shoes, and really have that discussion. That's where learning takes place. Putting yourself in a disequilibrium and to learn. You can sit there and memorize a bunch of vocabulary words, but if you don't know how to use them in a sentence, or if you haven't practiced using those vocabulary words or truly understanding them in a discussion with somebody where you're trying to communicate to them what that means, are you really learning it, or are you just memorizing? And I think that's what will separate a true learning from just rote memorization, being robots, because that's the last thing we want the kids to do. As far as
exactly,
AI,
and we have robots to be robots, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
we need to be human.
Exactly. I'm a little controversial, I think, when it comes to the ChatGPT. You being a university professor, I think ChatGPT is a tool. It's not going away. What you need, I think when we're teaching writing to students, I think it's something, it's kind of like when the word processor was invented. Handwriting became less and less of an issue when people were typing more. I think we should teach typing more in school. And of course, this goes back to my third grade report card where I was getting dinged for handwriting. But
I knew that you still had a grudge about that.
Yeah, I'm still sore about that. That was my only C. Everything else was A's and B's. But
you got graded for handwriting?
Yes.
Wow.
Of all, and if you saw my handwriting, though, they even had me tested for dyslexia or something. But I just was, I don't know. I was an interesting kid, as my third grade teacher said.
You knew you had a career in computing and robotics, and you wouldn't need to hold a pen.
Oh yes, I did. Yes, I can tell already. But like ChatGPT, I've actually used ChatGPT because I actually think it's helpful for kids and for adults too, as overcoming the hardest part of writing. To me, the hardest part of writing, creative writing, what have you, is that rough draft. Because once you get your rough draft, the writing process, the rest of the process is so much easier, because once you have something, Mark Twain said, writing is easy. Just write everything and then delete the stuff you don't like. It's I think with ChatGPT, for those of you that aren't familiar with ChatGPT, that's the AI will write it for you.
Mhm.
I've actually I've had stories where I just say, hey, write a story about blah, 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 blah. And I put in enough information, and then it spits out an example, and then I'll go in and tweak it. And so many of my students, they have these great ideas, but they just don't know how to put them on paper. So to me, using ChatGPT to teach writing as a training wheel is important. Understanding it as a tool that you eventually will wean the kids off of, because eventually it's like modeling the writing for them, and then eventually they figure out their own pattern. They don't even need it. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. So that's totally good. So seeing that these things have benefits, but making sure our children don't become too reliable on them. And
Yes.
and so making sure, I guess, that they're learning the skills of using the tool, but also developing their own internal skills, right?
Yes, and I think understanding that in any form, AI is going to be a tool. People thought, we got to remember that people were afraid of the steam engine. Back when trains were invented, people were afraid if you go a certain miles per hour, your brain's going to pop out the back of your head, and that didn't happen. But I think it really is how you manage it. It's like with any tool, how you manage it. I don't think Skynet's going to be self-aware. I don't think Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to come see us, but I do think we do need to be careful more. I feel like AI is not the threat. It's the misuse of AI is going to be what we have to really be careful of.
Yeah, 100%. I think with anything, any technology or any any invention, if we don't use it safely, there's the potential for harm. So 100% agree. Aaron, I'm quickly going to play the advert from our sponsor, and then I'll be back for the final 5 minutes of questions.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. Whoosh.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centered French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
So, Aaron, off the back of that advert, did you learn a language in school, or is computing your language?
Yes and yes. I actually took 4 years of Spanish, but
Ooh,
hablo
muy bien.
poquito. What's that?
Muy
Yeah,
bien.
muy bien. Yeah, and what was funny about that was my second job out of college was I was a manager for a large group at IBM in Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, and I managed a group on the production floor. They made PCs, and a majority of my staff, English was a second language, Spanish was their primary language, and in some cases they barely spoke English at all. We had this really cool program where we brought in people from Spanish-speaking countries on a work visa, and it was like a trade-off. They would get free English classes while they worked for us, and so I had to really brush up on my Spanish. And they had a nickname for me called El Chico de la Playa, which I guess translates to the boy from the beach or the guy from the beach, because at the time I had a really thick Virginia Beach accent. I was like, yo soy su jefe, bienvenidos, nosotros trabajo, and all that kind of stuff. And so, but it was funny, but they appreciate it. But you also make a really good point too about programming language, and that's something that I've a lot of students learn. A lot of folks know that programming languages is exactly that. It sounds like, oh, it's too much math, blah blah blah. But programming language is basically how you communicate to a machine to have the machine do what you want. And I love it because teaching programming is great because it helps you with structuring when you're sequence of events, we always do this great lesson where I get the peanut butter, jar of peanut butter, bread, a butter knife, and jelly.
Oh, I know
jam.
the old algorithm lesson.
Yes, most teachers.
So tell us for anyone who's not done the old jam sandwich. I love this lesson.
Yeah, exactly. And most of us have done this. If you haven't, it's really cool because you have the kids tell you, okay, we need to. All right, I want you to tell me how to make a peanut butter and jam sandwich, and then they'll say, all right, well, now you got to take a piece of bread, and then you say, put the peanut butter on the bread. So you take the jar of peanut butter and smash it on the bread. And they're like, no, you got to open the bread. You got to open the jar. And so they realize that you have to break down everything that you want to do into these moves, and you can't make assumptions. And so, and which again kind of goes back to that AI point that we're talking earlier, is that AIs, you have to be specific when you're communicating with a machine, or they're going to think, oh, the user wants me to put the jar on top of the bread. No, I want you to unscrew it and scoop some peanut butter out, and I think that's such an important eye-opening lesson that the kids realize, oh, I really have to be specific.
Yeah, honestly, I love that you know that lesson, because when I was head of computing, that was my favorite lesson. I think I saw it when I did a CPD training in London, and the guy really went to town. I think he called himself like the sandwich bot. And you know what you said at the start, like you need to be a performer. Like that was me. I was like, I'm going to embrace sandwich bot. I'm going to run with this. And I remember like properly robot moves. Yeah, so much fun. And that's like back to what we were saying, like even away from the screen, it's about how we communicate. And I think that's the great thing computing teaches us, that like, we need to break things down. Any problem actually can be broken down into manageable pieces, right? And if we communicate, we can learn from others, collaborate. That's the enjoyment of education, right?
Absolutely. I before we leave, I want everybody to look up Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis is an American jazz musician, and he does a lot of TED Talks now, but he was a jazz musician that back in the 60s and 70s, he would travel with other musicians. And one time he traveled with a Southern white gentleman, musician, who happened to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan, which is in the United States, if you're familiar, very racist organization. They had to drive for 8 hours, and Daryl Davis is a black man. And in that drive, they had a long conversation, and it was one of those things where Daryl Davis, instead of getting all upset, he listened to the guy and asked him questions. By the end of that trip, he got the guy to quit the Ku Klux Klan, turn in his robes, and he saw Daryl Davis. He realized how wrong he was in a lot of his thoughts. And Daryl Davis has now collected over 200 Ku Klux Klan hoods that he has gotten people to quit the Ku Klux Klan. And it was from talking, getting people, and that's where the other part of communication is. It's not just listening and like being able to communicate your thoughts, but when you really get people to try to communicate with you, two things happen. One, they either reinforce their beliefs, or they start to see the inconsistencies. Here's this guy that's supposed to hate Daryl Davis, but he's enjoying this guy. He's realizing this guy's smart. This guy is a friend. I enjoy this guy's company, and he starts to see the problems in his own thought process. And I think, and that's just one example. But I think in society, I hope we really start to listen to each other and find out how much in common we really do have with each other. And we realize that a lot of our hate is really just ignorance of not understanding each other's shoes, not understanding how we are with each other. And that's kind of where I want kids to realize, to start communicating with each other and trying to get to know each other and trying to be critical thinkers and really see the commonalities we have with each other.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Inspiring words on a Friday morning here, Aaron. I love that. Yeah. It's just about listening, challenging our thinking when I guess what we hear isn't what we thought we would hear or what we're used to hearing, and being able to change our way of thinking. Wow, amazing. Thank you for sharing that story with us. I can't believe it's 12 o'clock here, so that must mean 7 a.m. your time.
Yes.
Good morning. But I'm afraid that means we're out of time. We'll I'll make sure that you're tagged in all our posts on Twitter from Teachers Talk Radio, Aaron, so people can follow you on Twitter. Is that okay if they come join you? Come get involved. Wonderful. And Aaron, I just want to thank you so much for being up so early and coming and sharing your educator wisdom with us from over the seas this morning.
Why, thank you, and thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And look at us, one hour show right on the nose. I wish you a wonderful weekend, Aaron. Hopefully I'll speak to you really soon.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Take care of yourself. Bye, Aaron. Bye. And from me here on Teachers Talk Radio, thank you everyone listening, everyone here I can see on Podbean, everyone listening live on the website, or if you're listening back. This was the Friday morning break with me, Poppy. Thank you to our guest, Aaron Burden, for waking up super early in Virginia, America, to come and join us. And I wish you all a really beautiful, peaceful, and happy weekend. See you soon.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.